Now we have heard some people talking about how we can try to combat news deserts, how we can avoid the last journalists disappear by reconnecting to audiences, try to change the content. Now we turn to something which is far away from content, but so relevant for content because it is paying for content and for journalists, meaning advertising. And I'm proud to welcome John Montgomery from the company is called WPP and GroupM. It is actually one of the biggest, it is the biggest go-between company between producers of goods and services and media. Isn't it right, John, that it is the company you represent is actually handling more than 1/3 of all advertising dollar around the world?
Yeah, hi Ulrich, and thanks so much for inviting me to be part of this conference. I think it's an important subject. Yeah, GroupM, which is we call it a media investment company, and on behalf of our clients like P&G and Unilever and Nestle and Chanel and many other wonderful large brands, we place their media in their media dollars, or if we optimize their media dollars by placing it in media, various media around the world, and we do invest more than 1/3 of the world's media dollars.
And you have been in the industry for many years, also running advertising agencies yourself, and you are South African, but you now live in New York, and you speak to us from New York right now next to Hudson River. Could you take us through when you were trying to help advertisers get most out of their money, finding buyers for their services and products? Where did you end up advising them that they should spend their money? Where did the money go, say, 10, 15, 20 years ago?
Yeah, it's I guess the way a media investment company works is you invest the next marginal dollar in the most effective medium, and you use combinations of media. And of course, 20 years ago, television was a very effective medium particularly for branded goods, because it had a wide reach and it had a very close engagement level. So because it was both sight and sound, it was highly effective. And then, around about 25 years ago, the internet came along, and that allowed us to look at audience targeting in a new way. So before, what we used to do is we used to do what we call contextual targeting, which is if, say, middle-aged women on the East Coast of the States used to watch a television program, we used to advertise goods and services targeted at a target audience like that. With the web, the attraction of the web is that you can advertise to a far tighter audience. So you're able to, if somebody clicks on a pair of shoes somewhere else, you're able to serve them ads for a pair of shoes. And so it's not about a generalized contextual audience, but it's very much around audience targeting, those people who are most likely to buy a product at a particular time, which was attractive because of its effectiveness and its ability to put your advertising in front of the right people at the right time. So that's how it's moved across from the broader media like print and television and out of home and radio into digital formats, which, as you know, are audio visual as well. But it's just one has the ability to get to the consumers that you're looking for most accurately.
So the development of tech, the digitalization of the industry has not only changed news habits, the way people consume media, but has also shifted the way media is financed. And so it would be fair to say 25 years ago, when I was a young reporter, if somebody producing a car wanted to sell that car, they basically had to either use TV commercials or more likely put it in the regional local newspaper. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, it's sort of this is probably oversimplifying it a little bit, but your
I'm a
broad
journalist.
image advertising,
Yeah.
your broad image advertising, the you know for instance for a car is that you would have the appeal of the car brand and the action shots of the car on the road, and you would build the image of a brand like Ford and the Ford trucks, make them look great, and then you your dealer in the local town would have the special offers and to try and pull people in. We call that top of the funnel, which would have been the television advertising. But then when you get down to what we call the bottom of the funnel, which is closer to the point of sale, you would be offering the special offers, the sale of the week for retail in your local newspapers, and particularly the classifieds. I used to work for a newspaper group for 10 years, and I was very involved in classified revenue. And I remember we got around 50% of the revenue of the newspaper was classified revenue. And there were sometimes tens, if 30, 40 pages of classifieds on a Friday for homes for sale, cars for sale. That's gone. That's gone.
And maybe for younger people in the journalistic profession, it would be fair to say at that time you talk about publishing a newspaper in a local market, for instance, in the United States or in Europe, was most likely one of the most profitable things you could invest in. If you owned a newspaper, you were a rich person. If you worked for a newspaper, you got pretty high salaries, right? Because you got all this money because you had the monopoly of the classified ads in your market. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, well, there certainly were profitable companies, but most large cities had several daily newspapers, and some had morning newspapers and evening newspapers, and so there was a lot of competition, but they were very profitable. And things like retail and classified advertising was really the financial engine that produced that profit.
And now, and you already answered that part of it, but with the rise of the internet and people moving away, and the ability for advertisers to target their consumers in a faster, more efficient way through tech platforms, the advertiser money has moved away from traditional media groups into these new tech giants, right? And made them the most profitable companies on planet Earth now. That's true, right?
Yeah. So I think if the tech giants weren't there, there would still be online classifieds. Just because it's such an efficient mechanism, and so I think that revenue, advertising revenue, started moving out of newspapers quite a long time ago. This wasn't a recent thing. I think this has been happening for decades, just because of the basic efficiency of the web. And here in the US, we have things like Craigslist and online classifieds, which are generally free. So even without the tech giants, but I think the most important sort of innovation here was Google and Google search. Of course, there were other search engines before Google, but Google is now the largest search engine worldwide. And that has become whatever you want, you search for. And that has become the de facto classifieds, where you can find whatever you need, both not necessarily products, but answers to what you're looking for, but also it's a massive advertising vehicle. So that really has been what's replaced classifieds. And then retail, of course, giants like Amazon and others in other countries have decimated the retail advertising businesses and the retail businesses per se. around the world.
So when we journalists and editors talk to each other, we have a tendency to say that these new media companies, these tech platforms, they have stolen our advertising. What do you say to that kind of? Is that true? Has they stolen it?
Yeah, I'm sort of a little critical of that point of view. I think that newspapers, to some degree, and this might be a little bit controversial in this environment, so forgive me. But I think that to some degree, newspapers have allowed this to happen. I remember having conversations 20 years ago when I got into digital about the move to digital. I ran a digital company, and I was trying to talk to publishers about the onset of digital and how things were moving digitally. And I believe that publishers moved too slowly in the main. No, I don't think that they could have avoided the onset, but I think that they could have optimized their sites for digital much earlier. There are some examples of amazing digital news properties. New York Times on my doorstep is one. They're profitable, and I remember them embracing digital very early on in the process, looking at subscription models, looking at alternative models, but also embracing the advertising model. I'd also say that this isn't over. I get the sense that newspapers or news organizations are being a little defensive about where they are in the world, and saying, all right, well, we have to go to a subscription model. And what we're seeing from around the world is that there's a limited appetite from consumers to pay for more than a certain number of subscriptions, and that number of subscriptions is pretty low. Maybe one or two. And so if you think about, it's not going to be every consumer buying 20 subscriptions. So the advertising market is still a very vibrant market for news organizations. The digital ad market is a $180 billion market in 2020. It's growing at 5%, and that's just digital display, by the way. That's the kind of advertising that could be in news organizations. It's growing at 5%. It's growing actually faster than search. So there's still an enormous market out there. And I think that, or I believe that newspapers have a really good pitch for advertising dollars. It's a high quality environment. There's a great deal of trust. There's a lot of research that's coming out now that proves that advertising in a news environment that is trusted by consumers, and that trust rubs off on the brands that advertise in that space.
And that's really interesting what you're talking about here. And this is also the reason why I want to talk to you, because the consequence of what you talked about for the last few minutes has, of course, and we all know that, has been layoffs, have been closing down of news organizations, and a lot of people I don't know if that will be fair to say, but also a company like yours has said, oh, that's capitalism. If people don't want to buy it, it has to die. But the consequence for democracy, for the public debate, for citizens of this independent journalism that was financed by advertising disappearing, what has that been? Is that concerning you personally, and is that concerning your company?
I think it concerns me. It concerns our company, and we should talk about what we're doing about it as well.
Exactly.
But it also concerns our clients and our marketers. Our marketers are liberal thinkers. They understand the threat to free speech and democracy, where we don't have journalists who have feet on the ground in a local community, the results of which are, no real oversight of local government, and kind of the general quality of news breaking down in local situations with disinformation and misinformation. And we've seen that with the current election situation in the US. But we can't go to marketers and say, there's a serious social situation. I think you need to help us. That's not what marketers are about. Is marketers are about selling goods. They've got shareholders. They're responsible to shareholders, and they have quarterly goals to meet. And I think that we have to lead with an operational solution to marketers that says it's actually very effective to advertise in newspapers. You should be moving a portion of your revenue. Maybe it's the revenue that you invest in social media. A portion of that into local news for the following reasons: one, trust; two, there's a longer dwell time when you're reading a news article. You're exposed to an ad for longer than you may be if you're scrolling through a social feed. And so the news organizations need to prove to advertising that this is a more effective vehicle, and we need to come out of the corner swinging. I think we've been too passive. We need to now come out as a and we can do this together. You don't have to do it individually by individual news organizations. But to come in as a news publisher, a body, and say, this is why it's more effective to advertise in newspapers. And by the way, it's very, very important for democracy. But I think it's important for us to do it in that order, not to say it's important for democracy. You've got to help protect free speech. We've got to come out and say there's a real good business reason for doing it. And that's really, that's what I haven't seen, or we haven't seen, is the news coming out strongly, coming out fighting for their corner.
So what we hear here is actually news. It's something out of the ordinary. It is the world's biggest marketing company helping the leading advertisers in the world, telling them not only should you think about the consequence for democracy of how you spend your dollar, but if there's a commercial argument for taking some of that money back from the tech giants and putting it back into regional, local news, even national news, because you sell more if it's placed next to something that people trust, right? Is that's the story you're now telling your clients?
We are trying to assemble. So the short answer is yes. We're trying to work and help news organizations bring that message to our clients, but we can't do it for the news organizations. The news organizations have got to do it for themselves. And I think that there's a real opportunity for news organizations in each country to get together, because you can put competitive differences aside. Once we've, this is a problem for news globally, and in every single country. We should put competitive differences aside and present empirical evidence to marketers to say, news is more effective, and you need to shift a certain percentage of your dollars back into news for the following reasons. Then our companies like ourselves who represent our clients can take that information to them and say, we think that this is a really good idea, and we're already doing that. So what GroupM and other agencies in the US have done through a remarkable organization called United for News, which is part of the Internews non-government organization, part of the Internews group, is we've assembled 8,000 titles, digital, or titles that are available digitally around the world. And we've created a kind of a programmatic infrastructure where we're promoting those actively to our teams around the world. And so we have 8,000 newspaper titles. We've assembled this through organizations like WANEFRA and the local media consortium in the US, and that represents titles in 31 countries. And we're trying to represent those to our buying teams around the world who buy programmatically. And programmatic is, for those of you who are not familiar, is an automated way of buying, which almost all media will be bought programmatically ultimately. It's a little bit like the way you buy stocks and shares on the stock exchange. And so it's very, very important way of buying. and we've got those titles on those lists because we're trying to bring an operational solution to this to the problem that we've got.
And you have actually named this project Safe Journalism, right?
So it's just it's a working title, but it's as good a title as any. But the organization that's if you like running this is United for News. You could find it on United for News and Internews website. And if you are watching this and you have a news organization who wants to get onto that list, then kind of please through yourselves or me get into contact with me. We'd be very happy to represent you. There are quality criteria. You need to have quality journalists. You need to have feet on the ground. You need to have good quality inventory that is free of invalid traffic. But we would be very happy to add them to that list.
Which is also interesting because you apparently don't say that we should save any kind of journalism. You're talking about quality journalism. So you're actually trying to change the incentive structure around financing, advertising, and news here by saying if you publish quality journalism and if you do it over certain standards, we would help you with the argument that it's better for the advertisers to take some proportion of the advertising money and put it back into the news industry, but only to quality news. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I mean, it's worth mentioning that my job at GroupM, I'm global head of brand safety. And what brand safety means is bringing quality impressions to our advertisers and keeping them away from risks like disinformation, like invalid traffic, like ads that are not viewable, IP infringement. In other words, any risk in the digital supply chain. So, and essentially what that means is that's about buying quality impressions. And you buy quality impressions from quality news organizations and from quality partnerships. So the two absolutely go together. And the thesis is that a quality impression is worth much more than just any old exposure on a website. You can buy for almost nothing, and you've seen them there. Those little terrible ads at the bottom of websites. That's what we'd all called clickbait. That's the opposite of quality. What we're looking for is a quality impression where there's a reader would be spending time with an article, building trust with the organization, building trust with the brand. That's what we would call a quality impression. And ultimately, I think brands are prepared to pay more for that.
But don't you get into the same problem that both Facebook and Google is? They understand that job is not only to downplay hate speech and fake news and all that, but also help audience find quality journalism, because if they can't find it, it will disappear. It won't be there. But how do you define quality? Here comes an idea. What if you could have objective criteria for news stories and news outlets saying, okay, such a proportion of stories are nuanced, are fact-based, invites to a dialogue, inspires, have several sources on stories dealing with problems, documenting that, asking critical questions, but also trying to inspire society to participate in a discussion on what should we do about the problem. That's what we call constructive journalism in essence.
Sure.
But if you have these criteria, would that be a way to move forward, saying there are these objective criteria in order to say this is what we could call quality, and with that stamp or with that way of looking at it, that would also give a better argument for advertisers to put their dollar there and not at clickbait news sites?
No, sure, and I mean that sounds like a good description of quality journalism. What we have to do is we've got to scale that, and we've got to remember we are looking at billions of impressions a day when we're busy buying this. So we have to have technology that identifies what we will call quality. So we have a look at the the amount of the ad that is in a viewable framework, the fact that it's not invalid traffic, so there are no robots, and we have a look at criteria like that matches our own quality criteria, and I think you'll find that there'll be a very accurate overlap between what you're describing and the way we describe quality and automate quality. But ultimately, when you have quality journalism that you've just described, I believe that your readership will go up and the trust level of your readership will go up. And so I think it's a net positive to strive towards that kind of quality description. It may be difficult for us to measure at our end, but I think it's a particularly good it's a good thing to aim for.
Could I try here at the end to try to summarize this in a journalistic way? But would it be fair to say that a company such like yours, for many years, maybe like a lot of other companies, mainly focused on bottom line, and no matter what kind of product, as long as it was legal, you would try to help, and you are now moving into a more trying to be more responsible also for society, and not only for bottom line, but also trying to figure out how can you benefit society using your professional skills, and not only focusing only on bottom line and what's the biggest profit, but how can you do good? Would that be fair to say that's a really big shift going on right now?
I think that we've always been responsive to the most effective advertising, delivering the most effective advertising to our advertisers. What's changed, I think, in the last 20 years is digital and the availability of digital and the unlimited supply of advertising. There are hundreds of millions of ads available to us to buy every single day. And as we start buying those, we found you can buy every level of price and quality of advertising. And where we've moved is trying to understand the value of better quality impressions, and not only better quality impressions, but how to make the overall digital ecosystem safer for consumers. Because if you make it safer for consumers, and when we say safer for consumers, I mean keeping them away from disinformation, harmful content, drugs for sale, all of the bad stuff that does appear on there, keeping the overall environment safer, keeps it safer for our brands. And so as the web has developed, we have developed skills, because the scenario is very, very different to the scenario it was 20 years ago. We've developed skills, and we've started to understand the value of quality. And so it's not as if we haven't been concerned with quality. I don't think that the quality discussions were the same 20 years ago, because there wasn't this unlimited amount of inventory. There wasn't the ability to share and spread information at light speed. There wasn't a situation where you had media like YouTube, where there are 500 hours of new content being uploaded every minute on YouTube. So the scale is stupefying on social media, and we've had to get our arms around that. And so we've definitely got better at that part of it. We really want to make media a better and safer place for consumers.
So that is a nuanced way of saying, yes, we are moving into a direction of us taking more responsibility also for society and help our clients.
Yeah, but I think it's not us just as the advertising group. It's marketers as a whole, and you'll be familiar, or perhaps the participants in the conference will not be. But there's a remarkable organization called the Global Alliance for Responsible Media that was formed last year. It now has I think close to 100 marketers, but every advertising group, every advertising body is part of that group, and working with the platforms and working with the media to ensure that harmful content stays out of the media, and that we could improve the quality of impressions moving forward. So there's a big concern about harmful content, about quality, and that's very, very intrinsic to what we're doing. So the answer is yeah, absolutely, but it's not something that's happened recently. I think we've all been grappling with it, and something like the Global Alliance for Responsible Media has allowed us to channel all of that energy through one body.
And what you're saying now, to wrap it all up, is to news people, publishers, editors, journalists, stop being so defensive. Do something. Place the argument that quality is good. Do quality, and then your company and some of your clients will help getting advertising that finance journalism into making sure that the news deserts do not grow bigger than they already are.
Yeah, and I would add something that we mentioned a little earlier, is work together in every country. So put your competitive differences aside and put together some empirical evidence to show marketers, to prove to marketers that advertising in quality environments, quality news environments, works better for their brands. And so we can take the business argument to them first, and we lead with the business argument. And then I think they will feel great about supporting journalism, local journalism, and helping save local journalism.
That's what I will call a constructive idea. Thank you very much, John, for participating here, and good luck with it to help save journalism. I think
Thanks,
we need
Ulrich.
it.
Thank you
Bye.
very much.